Hello, everyone, especially to Dr. Kabilis and my classmates. This is me, Teacher Ale, and my task is to first continue the report of Justine about David Ausubel's meaningful verbal learning. And later on, I will introduce to you another famous psychologist who contributed in cognitive and education psychology. So under David Ausubel's meaningful verbal learning subsumption theory, we have known that he strongly believed in meaningful learning, and he also developed his theory of advanced organizers. So first, the question is, what are advanced organizers? So these are previews or introductions which the student reads before studying the main body of the new material. He advocated the use of advanced organizers as a mechanism to link new material with existing related ideas. So for you to remember what advanced organizers are, remember this key phrase. It is bridging the gap between what the learner already knows and what he needs to know so that he can learn the task or the lesson in a faster pace. So it's just basically connecting the new information to the existing knowledge. So how is this helpful? So advanced organizers help in a way the process of learning when difficult and complex ideas are introduced. So we will get into more detail in the next few slides. So there are actually 4 types of advanced organizers. The first one is what we call expository. It provides a description of new knowledge. Number 2, we have narrative, presents new information in a format of a story. Number 3, skimming is done by looking over a new material to gain a basic overview. And number 4, graphic, a method of presenting information in the visual realm. So first, let's get into the first type of organizer, expository. So this one presents students with more detailed information of what they will be learning, especially the information that may be difficult to understand. An example here is the lesson about a cell. Instead of asking the student, what is mitochondrion or what is a myelin sheath, you are going to immediately provide them the information, the parts of the cell, the functions. So you're going to present to them the detailed information right away, because this type of lesson is already complex or difficult to understand. So that's what expository is all about, presenting the students with detailed information. The second one is what we call narrative, right? So stories can make something distant or unfamiliar seem personal and familiar. Stories can make students thinking and help them make personal connections to new information. So example here, before you begin, if you're a history teacher and you're going to teach about the experience of immigrant groups who migrated to the US or moved to the US, why don't you tell a story about your own relative or your someone who you know that also experienced migrating from the Philippines to another country. By using the narrative type of organizer, it makes the student feel more at home because they're personally connected to the lesson that you're about to provide them. So the third one is skimming. Previewing the important information that will be encountered later by focusing on and noting what stands out in headings, subheadings, and highlighted information. So skimming is basically just focusing on highlighted information. Example here is when you begin a new lesson, give students a minute, 60 seconds to skim an article, a word problem. Let them pay attention to headings, subheadings in the first sentence of each paragraph. This will help students become aware of what information they will be learning when they read the article more carefully. And the last type of organizer we have here, graphic organizer. So this is just basically the use of visuals like T-charts, sequence charts, Venn diagram, main idea web, and concept map. So this provides students with guidance on what the important information is in a lesson or unit. They visually, so yeah, you have this visuals, right? That represents information of what students are about to learn. And when you have this graphic organizer, it is easy to see the relationship of what is important and the relationship between concepts and ideas. So now, that is it about David Ausubel's meaningful verbal learning, subsumption theory, and advanced organizers. So now we're going to move to another theory created by who we call Jerome Bruner. Okay, so Jerome Bruner come up with constructivist theory. As you see, he lived 100 years. He was born around 1915 and passed away on 2016. So I quoted from one of his writings in his book for you to ponder upon while we are discussing about his theories and ideas later on. Okay, so here it goes. I'm going to read. We teach a subject not to produce little living librarians on the subject, but rather to get a student to think for himself, to consider matters, to take part in the process of knowledge getting. Knowing is a process, not a product. So that's something you have to ponder upon while we are going to discuss about Jerome Bruner. Okay, first, who is Jerome Bruner and why is he significant in cognitive psychology and education psychology? So Jerome Bruner was a leader of cognitive revolution that ended the reign of behaviorism in American, psychological research and put cognition at the center of the field. In the course of his 3 decades at Harvard, Bruner published works on perceptual organization, cognition, and learning theory, all of which departed dramatically from the deliberate mind-blindness of behaviorism by emphasizing the importance of strategies and mental representation in the processing of real-world phenomena. So that's the definition of it. So Bruner spent 3 decades in Harvard, but also he spent time in Ivy League universities like New York universities, Oxford universities. But during his time in Harvard, he was able to write a book co-authored with 2 people who were Jacqueline Goodnow and George Austin. That was in 1956. The title was A Study at Thinking. So this book reported results from a series of studies in investigating concept information. So these were studies, very important. And what happened after here was that what they have written was used in countless studies by subsequent researchers. researchers. That's why Jerome Bruner made a huge impact in the cognitive perspective, or cognitive and education psychology. So before we get into the three modes of learning, I want to give you the definition of constructivism, because Jerome Bruner came up with the constructivist theory. So first, constructivism is as perspective in education is based on experimental learning through real life experience to construct and conditionalize knowledge. A major theme in the theory of Bruner is that learning is an active process in which learners construct new ideas or concepts based upon their current or past knowledge. So that's the definition of constructivism. So equally influential were Bruner's investigations about children's cognitive development. So he came up with three representations of knowledge. So he proposed this three-tiered system of internal representation. We have inactive, action-based, iconic, image-based, and symbolic, language-based. So when we say inactive, the example of that is like a child playing with a book. So iconic, image-based, like this children looking at pictures, and symbolic, learn through abstract symbols. So I'm gonna give more examples in the next slides. So Bruner's theory of cognitive development deals with how knowledge is stored or represented in memory. So all three modes of representation are interconnected and utilized in adulthood. So hindi lang ito sa mga bata, kundi igagamit din to sa adults. So let's see. First one is inactive. If you remember, that was action-based. So in the first year of life, kids learn primarily by doing, as they interact with their environment through physical actions such as what? Tasting, touching, moving, and grasping. Inactive representations are formed. Knowledge is stored as a series of motor responses, or what we commonly refer to as muscle memory. So here, infants or kids may store the movements involved. So these are the examples. So more examples are like shaking a rattle or holding a bottle. So when the memory is retrieved, the movement is recreated. For us adults, we can also make use of these form of inactive representation when we engage in motor tasks, such as riding a bicycle, driving, typing, or playing a musical instrument. So next one we have is iconic, image-based, from 1 to 7 years of age. So as the children get older, they develop the ability to store knowledge in the form of mental images or icon. These images may be visual, nakikita, naririnig, or other sensory inputs, maybe possibly nahawakan through textures. So when we use pictures, maps, diagrams, and videos to aid learning, we are making use of the iconic mode of learning. So learning can be made through, like this, models and pictures. So learner can now use mental images to stand for what? certain objects or events, where this allows one to recognize objects when objects are changed in a minor way. Example here is a mountain, diba? Mountains with and without snow at the top. So they could easily recognize that one already. So the third mode of representation we have here is symbolic, from 7 years onwards. It involves storing information in the form of abstract symbols rather than images. So two of the most commonly used are words, alphabet, language, and numbers. The symbolic mode allows for information to be summarized and more easily manipulated. So the most common here are like math and language for symbolic representation. Now we go to spiral curriculum. So Bruner strongly argued that any subject matter, including complex concepts, can be presented in a form that is simple enough for a learner at any age to understand. So kahit gaano pa kahirap ang isang lesson, kayang i-simplify ito at ipaintindi sa isang learner sa kahit anong edad. Quoted from him, any subject can be taught effectively in some intellectually honest form to any child at any stage of development. So Bruner stressed that teaching should always lead to boosting cognitive development. So if we look at this picture we have here at the bottom, new content or new lesson ituturo. In the middle, we have revision, and on top, we have mastery. And that's why it's called spiral curriculum, because it goes like this, in a spiral manner. And the difficulty is increasing as well. So how would we understand spiral curriculum? So Bruner advocated a spiral curriculum in which the subject matter is taught at various levels with increasing depth and breadth. Ano ibig sabihin nun? At first, only basic principles are presented, but as the learner advances to higher levels of education, the subject is revisited with additional details being presented. Learning, therefore, takes place in a spiral fashion, with the learner continually building on what he or she has already learned. And for us teachers, ano ba ang dapat nating magawa? Ano ba itong spiral curriculum talaga? So our curriculum should be organized in a spiral manner so that yung mga estudyante natin, they continually build upon kung ano na yung mga natutunan nila. Yung curriculum natin dapat minomodify natin, binibisita natin by teaching the same content pero in different ways. Depende yon sa level ng ating estudyante. So Bruner believed learning is most effective when material is presented in sequence. Diba kanina itinuro ko sa inyo kung ano yung learning modes. We have inactive, iconic, and symbolic. And according to Bruner, he believed that mas ma-absorb agad ng mga bata isang lesson kapag itong learning modes ito ay presented in a sequence. So example, from inductive, using manipulatives or tangible objects, to iconic, papakitaan mo sila ng pictures, images, diagrams, to symbolic, yun na yung gagamit ka ng words and other symbols. Katulad nitong picture na pinapakita ko ngayon. For example, concept complex, katulad ng complex concept, katulad ng fraction. Kahit ako, I admit that I'm not really good at math. So how would we teach this in younger age, in very young age, and very young children? So we can make use of what we call these tangible fraction circles. So as children mature, pwede na nating gamitan ng other modes of representation, di ba? Hindi lang tangible or manipulatives ang gagamitin natin, kundi we can use symbolic na kung sa mga elementary and high school. All right, so that's about spiral curriculum. So not only Bruner theorized about cognitive development, hindi lang yun yung ginawa niya, hindi lang siya nag-theorize, kundi nagsulat about the process of learning. And based from what he has done, he believed that children should be active participants in the learning process rather than being passive recipients. Nakaupo lang sa classroom, nakikinig lang. Dapat, sila, engaging sa pag-aaral. So he promoted the idea of what we call discovery learning, in which children learn through engagement, experimentation, and exploration. So ano ba ang role nating teacher dito? So from Bruner's standpoint, the objective of instruction should be to help learners become self-sufficient. Sarili lang nila sapat na, or dapat kaya nilang mag-isa to solve problems. Hindi yung ini-spoon feed natin yung mga estudyante. Tayong teachers should only function as facilitator. Ito ay sa standpoint ni Bruner, helping students to discover principles or to figure out things by themselves. So we will only give them the necessary information, and it is up to them to discover the relationship between concepts and ideas by themselves. So ito yung example ng discovery learning sa primary, elementary school, and high school. So teachers sa elementary school will ask students to provide the name of types of animals, and students classify the animals by examining their similarities and differences. So yun yung types of animals like birds, fish, mammals, and guided with teacher to ensure the classifications are proper. So nandun na yung teacher para mag-guide. Now, students become active contributors as they discover the similarities and differences among animals. Pag sa high school naman, in our chemistry class, of course, experimentation. So the teacher provides Mr. Liquids, and the students discover the elements in each liquid. Students could proceed through a series of experiments. So in this case, students learn about the reactions of various substances to certain chemicals and determine the contents of their mystery substance. So that's how we can use discovery learning in the classroom. So a teacher like me or you, if you're interested in applying these principles, we can present this to our pupils with a puzzling situation or interesting question. So what I'm showing you right now is a picture, and then this is how you're gonna ask your students. Why does the flame go out when a burning candle is covered by a glass? So instead of us giving the students the answer, we can present them the materials they can use to investigate the problem on their own. So here, so discovery learning, learners become like little scientists. Remember the quote that I have given you at the start of when I was about to introduce Bruner. So this is it. Learners become little scientists, making observations, suggesting hypotheses based on previous knowledge, and then testing them. Kaya nga ito tinatawag na constructivist constructivist approach, because learners are involved. Active participants sila. Actively constructing new ideas based on past and current experiences. So the learner attaches meaning to new information based on what they already know. Bruner believed knowledge acquired in this way is better than retaining information that is simply passed down from an instructor. I think I like Bruner's approach, because many curriculums, especially American curriculums, love this approach. The International Baccalaureate curriculum, one of the schools that I was about to apply to, their curriculum is solely based on Bruner's constructivist theory. They want children to learn by themselves, only with the guidance of the teachers. Teachers are only facilitators, student-centered. Okay, so last part of this constructivist theory is the 4 aspects being addressed by the theory of learning. Okay, the first one, predisposition to learn, the readiness for learning. Number 2, structure of knowledge, the ways in which a body of language can be structured so it can be most readily grasped by the learner. Number 3, effective sequencing, presentation of lesson in increasing difficulty. And number 4, reinforcement, rewards and punishment that should be selected and paced appropriately. So let me explain to you briefly each aspect. So first, predisposition to learn. Introduce the ideas of readiness learning. Here, Bruner emphasized social factors and early teachers and parents' influence on this. So may influence ang magulang, ang mga teachers, about sa readiness ng pag-learn ng bata. He believed learning and problem solving emerge out of exploration. So as teachers, we have to maintain and direct a child's spontaneous exploration, yung curiosity ng bata. Dapat ma-maintain natin bilang guro. And also it is mentioned here that this feature specifically states the experiences which move the learner toward a love of learning in general or of learning something in particular. So through experiences in the classrooms or maybe the start of our home, they realize that they're actually ready to learn and they have this love of learning, or just the drive to learn something in particular. That's why I said, I mentioned curiosity and also exploration. And of course, as in the standpoint of Bruner. So number 2, structure of knowledge. The ways in which a body of knowledge can be structured so that it can be most readily grasped by the learner. A body of knowledge must be in a simple enough form for the learner to understand it, and it must be in a form of, it must be in a form recognizable to the student's experience. So, yung ituturo natin sa mga estudyante, it can always be in the simplest form na para maintindihan nila. And it has to be recognizable at relatable in to students' experience. Number 3, effective sequencing. no sequencing will fit every learner, but in general, the lesson can be presented in increasing difficulty. I think I have also discussed this in spiral curriculum. So it has similarities here. So hindi lahat ng tinuturo ay naangay sa lahat. So we could teach this in content, but depende yan sa level ng estudyante. And also, if the kid is still very young, we can introduce very basic concepts and ideas or principles first, and then later on we can, when they advance to higher level of learning, then we can revisit the same subject, but then add more information. So habang nag-a-advance sila ng level, medyo naging mas mahirap na din yung itinuturo sa kanila. And the last one is reinforcement. Rewards and punishments should be selected and paced appropriately. So it's just giving a student a reward for learning, for them to be motivated. So this is very external, and hindi parate merong means yung teachers to provide a reward din sa mga estudyante. Okay, so even Bruner sees this as something shallow, artificial, and only short-term gain. So pag nawawala yung external reinforcement, so does what they have learned. And mas okay daw na hindi natin ginagamit masyadong reinforcement, and mas mag-rely tayo, we can focus more on intrinsic motivation. Paano natin sila ma-inspire, ma-motivate inside our class. So intrinsic, which basically means no external factors. Walang kailangan ibigay na reward. So that's it for my report. Thanks for listening, Dr. Cabillas, and to my classmates. If you have any questions, you can email me and give me a call or visit my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.